The firing range on Sector 9 training base smelled like ozone and failure. I had been instructing combat fundamentals for 7 cycles now, and I thought I had seen everything. Vraxian cadets, who could barely hold a standard pulse rifle without trembling. Keltari recruits whose tentacles kept slipping off the grip mechanism. That one memorable Pulverin who had somehow managed to shoot himself in 3 of his 4 feet during basic target practice. But humans? Oh, the humans were something special. My name is Instructor Vec, and I am what your species would call a professional. 200 combat drops, 15 years of military service, 6 commendations for excellence in training. I did not earn my position by being soft, and I certainly did not earn it by tolerating incompetence. The weapon in question sat on the demonstration table like a sleeping predator. The M-Class Graviton Accelerator, standard issue for heavy assault units, weighing in at 47 carats, which for you primitive measurement enthusiasts translates to roughly 98 of your Earth pounds. The recoil compensation system alone required a triple lock harness and a minimum strength rating that only 3 species in the Alliance could naturally achieve. It was, by any reasonable standard, a 2-person weapon. "All right, listen up," I barked at the assembled cadets. 37 beings from 12 different species, all standing at what they believed was attention. This is the M-Class. You will not be firing this weapon. You will not be touching this weapon. You will be looking at this weapon and understanding why your species was not designed for heavy weapons combat. A few nervous chittering sounds from the Quellic in the back row. Good. Fear meant respect, and respect meant they would actually survive their first deployment. The M-Class fires depleted uranium rounds at 0.85 light speed. I continued, pacing in front of the table. Each trigger pull generates approximately 4,000 newtons of force. The weapon requires a minimum of 2 hands, a stabilized firing position, and a strength coefficient rating of no less than 8.2. The recoil will break bones. The muzzle flash will blind you if you are stupid enough to fire without proper eye protection. And the sound? I paused for effect. The sound will make you wish you had stayed home on whatever backwater planet spawned you. A hand went up. Human hand, naturally. They always had questions. "Yes, Cadet." I checked my datapad. "Cadet Marcus Webb?" The human stepped forward. Tall by their standards, maybe 6 of their feet, with the kind of casual confidence that made my secondary spine itch. Brown hair cropped short in that ridiculous military fashion they all seemed to favor. Eyes that looked too calm for someone standing in front of an instructor who had made 3 cadets cry already this morning. "Sir, what's the actual firing mechanism? Chemical propellant or electromagnetic?" I blinked both sets of eyelids. "Did you not hear anything I just said about how you will not be touching this weapon?" "I heard you, sir. I am just curious about the mechanics." Curious? Of course he was curious. Humans were always curious. It was simultaneously their greatest strength and their most annoying characteristic. "Hybrid system," I said, deciding to indulge him for exactly 5 seconds. "Chemical primer ignites the initial charge. Electromagnetic rails accelerate the projectile to terminal velocity. Satisfied?" "Yes, sir." "Thank you, sir." He did not step back into formation. He just stood there, looking at the rifle with the kind of expression I had seen on Kreven engineers examining a new engine design. Like he was taking it apart in his mind. "Was there something else, Cadet Webb?" "Permission to speak freely, sir?" Oh no, nothing good ever followed those words. "Denied. Get back in formation." "Sir, I think I could fire that rifle one-handed." The entire range went silent. Even the ventilation system seemed to pause in disbelief. I stared at this human, this ridiculous, overconfident, clearly suicidal human, and I felt my primary jaw start to ache from how hard I was clenching it. "You think," I said slowly, that you could fire a 98-pound rifle designed for species with triple your muscle density. One-handed? Yes, sir. You understand that the recoil would tear your arm off? I respectfully disagree, sir. A Gorthakian cadet made a sound like escaping steam. I think it was laughter. I shot him a look that could have melted hull plating, and he immediately went silent. Cadet Webb, I said, my voice dropping to what my previous students called my pre-explosion calm. I have trained thousands of soldiers. I have seen combat in 17 different stellar systems. I have personally witnessed a Carvachian warrior, a being with 4 arms and a muscle structure that could crush titanium, attempt to fire this weapon from a standing position. Do you know what happened? No, sir. He dislocated both right shoulders and cracked 3 ribs. He was in medical for 2 weeks. Webb nodded, like I had just told him the weather forecast. That is unfortunate, sir, but I still think I could do it. You know that feeling when you are not sure if you should be impressed by someone's confidence or horrified by their stupidity? That is where I was, teetering on the edge between those 2 states like a cargo shuttle with a failed stabilizer. The smart thing would have been to shut this down immediately, to dress him down in front of the entire unit and make an example of human arrogance. But here is the thing about being an instructor for as long as I had been. You develop a sense for when someone is just talking big, and when they actually believe they can do something impossible. And Marcus Webb believed. Fine, I said, and I swear I saw several cadets flinch. You want to prove that humans are somehow special? That you can defy physics and common sense? I will give you exactly 1 chance. You will attempt to fire this weapon one-handed. When you fail, and you will fail, you will spend the next month on latrine duty. All 47 latrines on this base, with a standard cleaning brush, no mechanized assistance. Do we have an understanding? Yes, sir. And when I say fail, I mean when you drop the weapon, break your arm, or simply embarrass yourself in front of your fellow cadets. Any of those outcomes results in the same punishment. Are we clear? Crystal clear, sir. He stepped up to the table. The other cadets had formed a semi-circle, nobody wanting to miss what was either going to be the most impressive thing they had ever seen or the most catastrophic. Personally, I was betting on catastrophic. I was always betting on catastrophic when humans were involved, and I was usually right. Webb picked up the rifle with both hands first, testing the weight. His arms dipped slightly, but he compensated quickly. Surprising, but not shocking. Humans had decent strength for their size, probably something to do with evolving on a high-gravity death world. But decent strength was not enough for what he was attempting. Whenever you are ready, Cadet, I said. The range is hot. Targets are set at 50 meters. You may fire when ready. He adjusted his stance. Feet shoulder-width apart, knees slightly bent. He was doing everything right for a 2-handed firing position, which made what he did next even more insane. He shifted his entire grip to his right hand. The rifle dipped immediately, the barrel swinging toward the ground as his arm took the full weight. I saw his shoulder muscles bunch, saw the tendons in his neck stand out like cables. For a moment, I thought he was going to drop it right there, save himself the embarrassment of actually trying to fire. But then he started to lift. Slowly, impossibly, the barrel came up. His right arm was shaking. I could see it from where I stood, but the rifle kept rising. 30 degrees, 45, 60, until it was level, pointing downrange at the target markers. Holy void, someone whispered. Might have been me. Webb's face had gone red with effort. Sweat was already beading on his forehead. His left arm hung at his side, hand clenched into a fist. Every muscle in his body seemed to be involved in keeping that weapon steady, and steady was a generous term. The barrel was wavering in small circles, but it was up, and it was pointed forward. "Last chance to back out, Cadet," I said, and I meant it. Pride was one thing. Actual injury was another. No shame in admitting this was a bad idea. He did not respond. He just thumbed the safety off. The first shot sounded like the universe cracking in half. The muzzle flash lit up the entire range. The depleted uranium round screamed downrange at an appreciable percentage of light speed and punched through the target marker like it was made of smoke. The recoil hit Webb like a physical entity, his entire body twisting to the right, his feet actually sliding on the deck plating. But he did not drop the rifle. And he did not scream. He just gritted his teeth, reset his stance, and fired again. Crack! Another target disintegrated. Webb's arm was definitely shaking now, the muscles probably screaming at him to stop this madness. The barrel dipped after the second shot, maybe 10 degrees, but he hauled it back up through sheer bloody-minded determination. Crack! 3 shots. 3 hits. I checked my data pad because I did not trust my own eyes. All 3 rounds had struck within the center mass of their respective targets. Not perfect shots, but combat effective. More than combat effective, honestly. He was doing it. This human lunatic was actually doing it. Crack. Crack. 5 shots total. 5 demolished targets. The smell of cordite and ozone was thick enough to taste. Webb's right arm looked like it was made of corded steel, every muscle fiber visible under his skin. His breathing was harsh and fast, but controlled. He was rationing his oxygen, managing the stress response. This was not luck. This was not adrenaline. This was trained, deliberate, controlled violence. Crack. 6. I realized my mouth was hanging open. I closed it. Professional bearing, Vec. You are an instructor. You have seen impressive marksmanship before, but not like this. Never like this. Crack. Crack. 8 shots. The rifle's magazine held 10 rounds. Webb had to know that. He had to be counting, had to be aware that he was almost done. But his expression had not changed. Still that same look of focused concentration, like he was working through a math problem instead of defying every safety regulation in the Alliance military handbook. Crack. 9. The barrel was dropping faster now after each shot. Whatever reserves of strength he had been pulling from were running dry. But he still brought it back up, still centered the target, still squeezed the trigger with the kind of smooth pull that would make a veteran sniper jealous. Crack. 10. The last target exploded into fragments. Webb held the firing position for exactly 2 seconds longer, then carefully, deliberately, lowered the rifle back to the table with his right hand. He engaged the safety, checked the chamber, performed every post-firing protocol exactly as I had taught them. Then he turned to face me, came to attention, and said, 10 rounds, 10 targets, sir. Permission to return to formation? I looked at him, looked at the rifle, looked at the smoking ruins of 10 target markers downrange, looked back at him. Webb. Yes, sir? Are all humans this insane, or are you special? For the first time since he had stepped up to that table, he smiled. It was not a cocky smile, not arrogant, just the quiet satisfaction of someone who knew exactly what they were capable of and had just proved it. I would say I am pretty average, sir. Average. Right. I made a note on my data. Pad to requisition stronger target markers, and possibly to have my psychological evaluation updated because I was clearly losing my grip on reality. Return to formation, Cadet. Yes, sir. He walked back to his position in line. The other cadets were staring at him like he had just sprouted wings and flown around the range. I did not blame them. I was staring at him the same way. Does anyone else, I said, pitching my voice to carry across the range. Have any other impossible feats they would like to demonstrate today? Anyone want to bench press a shuttle? Juggle plasma grenades? Arm wrestle a Carvachian? Silence. Beautiful. Perfect silence. Excellent. Since Cadet Webb has apparently decided to make the rest of you look bad, we are going to spend the next 3 hours on standard pulse rifle drills until you can at least hit targets with both hands on the weapon. If I see anything less than 80% accuracy, we will be here until your species equivalent of nightfall. Move out. They scattered toward the armory, a chaotic mass of beings trying to look like they knew what they were doing. Webb was already helping a Vraxian cadet adjust their grip on a standard pulse rifle, showing them how to compensate for their smaller hand size. I stood at the demonstration table, looking at the M-class. The barrel was still warm. The air around it was doing that shimmering thing that heavy weapons always produced after sustained fire. 10 shots. One hand, 10 targets. My communicator chirped. Commander Yalix wanted a status update on the training session. I typed out a quick report. All cadets performing adequately. No incidents to report. Then I paused, deleted that, and wrote, request permission to run additional stress tests on human physical capabilities. Preliminary results suggest current safety ratings may be inadequate. I hit send before I could overthink it. Downrange, the training session was in full swing. Pulse rifles were firing in controlled bursts. Targets were being hit with varying degrees of accuracy, and everything was proceeding exactly as it should. Just another day on Sector 9 training base. Except it was not. Because I had just watched a human being do something that should have been impossible, and he had made it look almost easy. And if Webb was average, if that confident statement had any truth to it at all, then I needed to seriously reconsider everything I thought I knew about Earth and the beings it produced. I had trained Carvachians, beings who could rip through bulkheads with their bare hands. I had trained Zvenir, whose reflexes operated on a temporal scale that made them seem like they were moving through stopped time. I had trained Korgaths, living tanks of muscle and bone plating. But humans were something different. Something I was only just beginning to understand. They were not the strongest. They were not the fastest. They were not the most durable or the most naturally gifted in any single category. But they were stubborn, they were adaptable, and they had this absolutely terrifying tendency to look at something labeled impossible and treat it like a personal challenge. I watched Webb demonstrate proper breathing technique to 3 cadets who were struggling with recoil management. He was patient, methodical, breaking down each component of the firing sequence into manageable pieces. A natural instructor, I thought. Give him a few years. He would probably be standing where I was, making some other poor species question their life choices. My communicator chirped again. Commander Yalix had responded. Permission granted. Submit detailed proposal by end of cycle. Intrigued by preliminary results. Of course he was intrigued. Everyone was going to be intrigued when word got out about what had happened here today. The humans were already making waves throughout the Alliance military structure, but this was going to accelerate that process considerably. I made another note on my data pad. Recommend updating standard operating procedures for human cadets. Current limitations may be artificially constraining their combat effectiveness. Then I put the pad away and did what I did best. I walked the line, correcting stances, adjusting grips, and occasionally yelling at cadets who thought accuracy was optional. But every few minutes, my eyes would drift back to that M-class rifle sitting on the demonstration table, and I would remember the sound of 10 impossible shots. 3 weeks passed before Commander Yalix finally called me into his office. The Sector 9 Command Center occupied the uppermost level of the training facility. All reinforced glass and strategic displays showing troop movements across 6 different star systems. Yalix himself was a Thoraxian, which meant he stood roughly 9 feet tall with skin like polished obsidian and 4 arms that could crush a lesser being's skull without breaking a sweat. He was also the smartest tactical mind I had ever served under, which made his next words all the more unsettling. "Tell me about Webb," he said without preamble. I had prepared for this conversation. 3 weeks of documentation, performance reviews, and carefully worded incident reports. "Sir, Cadet Webb has proven to be an exemplary trainee. Top marks in tactical assessment, weapons proficiency, and unit cohesion exercises. His leadership scores place him in the 97th percentile across all species." Yalix's primary eyes narrowed. His secondary eyes, the ones on the sides of his head that tracked peripheral movement, remained fixed on something behind me. "I did not ask for his file summary, Instructor. I asked you to tell me about him." "Right. This was why Yalix commanded a sector base, and I taught people which end of the rifle to point at the enemy." "He is trouble, sir," I said honestly. "The useful kind, but trouble nonetheless. He questions protocols that do not make sense. He pushes his physical limits on a daily basis. Yesterday I caught him running the obstacle course with a 40-pound pack, and when I asked why, he said he wanted to see if he could beat his previous time." "Did he?" "By 14 seconds, sir." Yalix made a sound like grinding stones, which I had learned was his version of a chuckle. "The humans are all like this?" "Not all of them, sir, but enough that I have had to completely restructure my training methodology. Standard doctrine assumes physical limitations based on species averages. Humans seem to view averages as suggestions rather than boundaries." "Show me the range footage." I had anticipated this as well. I pulled up the holographic display and cued the recording from 3 weeks ago. The image of Webb lifting that M-class rifle flickered to life between us, rendered in perfect 3-dimensional detail. Yalix watched in silence as Webb fired all 10 shots. His expression, already difficult to read given the fundamental differences in our facial structures, became completely unreadable. When the footage ended, he stood there for a long moment, all 4 arms crossed over his chest. "Physics should not allow this," he said finally. "I submitted the recordings to the medical division, sir. They ran a full biomechanical analysis. According to their report, Webb was operating at approximately 94% of his absolute muscle fiber recruitment capacity. Most beings can only access about 65% without extensive neural training or chemical enhancement. And he did this naturally? Apparently humans evolved with a built-in limitation system that prevents them from damaging themselves through overexertion. But under stress conditions, that system can be voluntarily overridden. They call it hysterical strength, though there was nothing hysterical about Webb's performance. It was controlled, deliberate, and repeatable. Yalix turned away from the hologram, moving to the window that overlooked the training grounds. I could see small figures moving through various exercises 5 stories below. "How many human cadets do we currently have in this facility?" 47, sir, spread across 3 training cohorts." "And how many of them could replicate Webb's performance?" That was the question that had been keeping me awake during my rest cycles. "Unknown, sir, but based on informal observation and performance metrics, I would estimate at least 60% could achieve similar results with proper motivation and technique training." 60%. Yalix's voice was flat. "You are telling me that more than half of our human recruits could potentially operate heavy weapons systems designed for species twice their mass?" "That appears to be the case, sir." He was quiet for another long moment. Outside, I could see Webb leading a group exercise, his voice carrying faintly through the reinforced glass as he called cadence for a formation run. "The Council is not going to like this," Yalix said eventually. The Galactic Council oversaw all military operations across Alliance space. 23 species, each with their own ideas about proper warfare and acceptable combat doctrine. Getting them to agree on anything was like trying to herd Farvellian gas cats, assuming the gas cats were all pointing weapons at each other and arguing about historical grievances. "Permission to speak candidly, sir?" "Granted." "I do not particularly care what the Council likes, sir. My job is to prepare soldiers for combat. If the humans can operate weapons that give them a tactical advantage, then I am going to train them to do exactly that. Politics can sort itself out after we win whatever war is coming next." Yalix turned back to face me, and I swear all 4 of his eyes were displaying approval. "That is why you are still an instructor after 15 years, Vec. You understand the mission. Very well. You have authorization to implement advanced weapons training for all human cadets who demonstrate appropriate capability. I want full safety protocols, medical oversight, and detailed performance documentation." "Yes, sir. And the Council?" "I will handle the Council. You focus on making sure these humans do not accidentally kill themselves showing off." He paused. "Or intentionally kill themselves. I have read the reports about their recreational activities. Apparently they have something called extreme sports?" "Yes, sir. I made the mistake of asking Webb about his hobbies once. He showed me a video of humans throwing themselves out of aircraft for fun." "For fun?" "They call it skydiving, sir. Apparently the risk of catastrophic failure is part of the appeal." Yalix made that grinding sound again. "Dismissed, Instructor. And Vec, good work. Genuinely. The humans may be insane, but they are our insane now. Let us make sure they survive long enough to terrify our enemies, instead of just us." I saluted and left his office, my mind already racing through training modifications and safety protocols. This was going to require significantly more ammunition than I had budgeted for. The next morning, I gathered all 47 human cadets in Briefing Room 7. They filed in with that characteristic human combination of discipline and barely contained chaos. Military bearing in their posture, absolute mayhem in their eyes. Webb was there, of course, along with names I had come to know well over the past months. Kira Halverson, who could field strip a pulse rifle in 12 seconds flat. Tommy Park, whose tactical assessments were so creative they bordered on poetry. Lisa Kowalski, who had somehow convinced a Gorthakian twice her size to tap out during hand-to-hand combat training. 47 humans who had left their homeworld to fight in wars that were not originally their problem, for a species collective that still was not entirely sure what to make of them. "Listen up," I said, and the room went silent immediately. Say what you will about human chaos, but they knew when to pay attention. You are probably wondering why I pulled all of you from your regular training schedules. The answer is simple. You are about to become test subjects. A few excited murmurs. Humans loved being test subjects, I had learned. Something about their psychology made them view experimental procedures as adventures rather than potential disasters. 3 weeks ago, Cadet Webb performed a weapons demonstration that should have been impossible. Some of you were there. The rest of you have certainly heard about it, because humans are apparently incapable of keeping quiet about anything interesting. That got a few laughs. Good. I wanted them relaxed for what came next. Command has authorized advanced weapons training for all human personnel who can meet the physical requirements. This means you will be evaluated for heavy weapons proficiency beyond standard doctrine. This also means you will be pushing your bodies to their absolute limits under controlled conditions with full medical supervision. I pulled up a holographic display showing the training schedule I had spent 3 weeks developing. The washout rate for this program among other species is approximately 40%. I expect you will do better, because apparently evolution designed you to be stubborn beyond all reasonable measure. However, if at any point you feel you cannot safely continue, you will immediately notify your instructor. Pride is not worth permanent injury. Are we clear? Yes, sir. 47 voices in perfect unison. Outstanding. Webb, front and center. He stood and moved to the front of the room, coming to attention beside me. Sir, you started this mess. You get to help me finish it. You are now acting assistant instructor for the Advanced Weapons Program. Congratulations on your promotion to responsibility and significantly longer work hours. His face split into a grin that would have looked threatening on a Carvachian. On a human, it just looked eager. Thank you, sir. I will not let you down. You better not. The first cadet who breaks something important is getting latrine duty, and I am putting you right there beside them with a scrub brush. Understood? Perfectly, sir. The training program began the following day. I had designed it in phases, each building on the previous one's lessons. Phase 1 focused on strength conditioning specific to heavy weapons operation. Phase 2 covered recoil management and muscle memory development. Phase 3 introduced actual live fire exercises with progressively heavier weapon systems. The humans attacked it with the same enthusiasm they seem to apply to everything, which is to say, they treated it like a competition between themselves and the laws of physics. By week 2, Halverson had managed to shoulder fire a weapon designed for mounted turret operation. By week 3, Park had developed a mathematical formula for optimizing stance based on weapon weight and recoil characteristics, which he then taught to the entire group. By week 4, Kowalski had convinced me to let her try dual-wielding medium pulse rifles, and then actually pulled it off with enough accuracy to qualify for marksman rating. They were insane. All of them. Beautifully, terrifyingly, effectively insane. But the real test came in week 5, when I introduced them to the Ragnarok system. The Ragnarok was not technically a weapon. It was a mobile artillery platform that required a 3-person crew and generated enough firepower to level a small city. Alliance doctrine stated clearly that it should never be operated by fewer than 2 personnel, with the 3rd serving as safety oversight. I had 47 humans looking at it like children examining presents on whatever holiday they celebrated. This, I said, gesturing at the Ragnarok, is what we call a force multiplier. It fires plasma-accelerated kinetic rounds at a rate of 600 per minute. Each round has an effective blast radius of 20 meters. The recoil system uses hydraulic dampeners rated for 15,000 newtons of force. Questions? Webb raised his hand. Of course he did. Yes, Cadet? Sir, has anyone ever tried to operate one of these solo? I looked at him, looked at the Ragnarok, looked back at him. Webb, I swear by all the stars in the void, if you are suggesting what I think you are suggesting, just theoretically, sir. I mean, the control interface looks pretty straightforward. Trigger mechanism, targeting system, power regulation. If someone had sufficient strength and coordination, it would kill them, Webb. Immediately and messily. The recoil alone would shatter every bone in their body. He nodded thoughtfully, like I had just confirmed something he had been wondering about, rather than describing a gruesome death. Right. So, probably not solo. But what about with a partner? 2-person operation instead of 3? I opened my mouth to tell him no, to explain, again, that some protocols existed for very good reasons, and should not be questioned by cadets who had been in the military for less than 6 months. But then I stopped, because I had seen these humans do impossible things every single day for the past 5 weeks. I had watched them break assumptions I had held for my entire career. I had documented performance metrics that made Alliance scientists question their understanding of biomechanics. And standing there, looking at Webb's eager face and the 46 other humans behind him who were already mentally figuring out how to make this work, I realized something important. I was not training soldiers anymore. I was training a revolution in combat doctrine. "Fine," I said, and I swear I heard my own sanity quietly pack up and leave. "You want to try two-person operation? We do it by the book. Full safety protocols. Medical team on standby. And if anyone, and I mean anyone, gets hurt because you decided to get creative, I am canceling this entire program and going back to teaching Vraxians how to hold rifles without dropping them." Webb's grin could have powered a small station. "Understood, sir. We will be careful." Careful. Right. Because that word has so much meaning to your species. 4 hours later, Webb and Halverson had successfully operated the Ragnarok with a two-person crew, achieving a target accuracy rating that exceeded standard three-person operation by 11%. I filed my report with command. Then I updated my resume because I was fairly certain I was going to need a new career after the council got finished with me. But watching those humans work, seeing them push past every limitation we had assumed was fixed, I could not bring myself to care about politics or protocols. They were writing a new chapter in Alliance military history, one impossible feat at a time. And I had the best seat in the facility to watch it happen.